full name?
John William Thompson Jr. My father was vice president of Campbell Soup Company, and my mother died when I was 3 years old.
What is your favorite memory of your mom and dad?
When the De La Salle, which was the high school I went to, played football, they always played on a Sunday. And then we stopped at a donut shop, which to this day I could find for you, but where it's at, I don't know. And we'd try just a plate of 5 donuts. And I always had soda. I don't know what he drank, I can't remember. But we did that every Sunday. It never occurred to me about siblings. I was an only child of what probably would be called a very successful father.
Where did you go to grade school?
St. Rita.
What about middle school?
I never went to a middle school.
I went to high school.
De La Salle.
What were your favorite subjects?
Well, spherical trigonometry. I liked, what else? Very frankly, the Christian brothers didn't care what you liked. This is what you took. You know, this was it.
And what were you like in school?
Well, I probably was a good student. I don't know if I was a straight A student.
Were you a troublemaker in school?
I doubt it.
Did you get in trouble in school?
I doubt it. Of course, you just don't know the French Christian brothers. They did not tolerate trouble.
What happened?
They didn't tolerate it.
What does that mean?
That means that, well, if the school started at 9 o'clock or 8:30, if you were 8:31, you came in the front door, and you met Brother Basil, who was related to the devil in some way, which I can't remember what he was, you know. And I never could figure out, but you might have missed that day on September 15th, and at Christmas time he would show one tardy. He had a good bookkeeping system.
What about a favorite childhood memory?
I don't know. People always say, where were you when Pearl Harbor was attacked? I was playing football in the street. That's what I was doing. It always amazes me that so many of those kids knew where Pearl Harbor was.
Did you ever go to a World's Fair?
Oh, yes.
Which one?
Century of Progress, 1933. My father was commander of the Black Horse Troop, which was a demonstration cavalry troop. And my mother used to rant and rave about paying to feed that damn horse. She said she could never understand if the Army bought the horse, why they didn't feed the damn thing.
Have worries about your neighbors during the Great Depression, and any of the things your parents did to help?
Oh, my mother thought that the kids next door were starving to death. Well, for me, you know, that's a question that is properly put to her, because my father was a successful person. So essentially, we wanted for nothing, you know.
How is life different now than it was when you were growing up?
That's hard to say.
Think the kids are different?
Well, do the kids play baseball in your street? Yeah, we did. Did they play football in your street? Yes, they did. So it's not a lot different.
friends enlisted in the war?
Those that didn't enlisted got drafted.
What age did you enlist?
18.
And were you able to choose which branch you went into?
Well, yes, I did.
You were able to. And what branch was that?
Army Air Corps.
What were your parents' reaction when you enlisted?
Well, my father, of course, felt it was inevitable. So he just was happy I went where I wanted.
Would it have been different if you were drafted? Would you not have been able to choose?
If you were drafted, you would not have been able to choose.
Was it hard leaving home to go to basic training?
No. You went downtown to a place, and it was a train station, and you all lined up. And to this day, I'll remember Elmer Hoagland. He was the least possible person to be in the Army. He got on the steps, fell and broke his leg. He never even got out of the station.
What was basic training like?
Oh, bunch of guys yelling at you. Mark keeps saying, why can't these guys just talk? So everybody yells at you.
Where did you go to basic training?
Pan American Airways. The thing I always hated was marching to breakfast. It's so stupid.
Who was the craziest guy you trained with?
A guy by the name of Little Joe.
Why?
Well, Little Joe developed the attitude that if it was a rule, it should be broken. Needless to say, as a result, we ran to breakfast more damn days than we ever walked. Actually, we used to fly out of Dinner Key, Florida, all the way down the Keys to the end, and then go across to a place called Bimini, and then come back from Bimini. I always liked that flight.
So your basic training was in float planes.
Pan American Airways.
Do you remember any of your instructors? Did you have a favorite instructor?
I had one that I would have cheerfully killed. See, they developed the attitude that wherever you went, you ran. So that result was we ran everywhere. See, Pan Am, all the instructors were civilians. There was no Army there. None. Zero.
Do you remember any of the missions you had?
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about some of those?
No. I remember them, but I can't tell you about them.
Are they classified?
No, I doubt they were.
Any of those missions, were some of them really scary?
Yes. Bombing Berlin was scary.
Why was that scary?
They didn't want to be bombed. That's one of the better reasons.
When you flew over Europe and you were doing those bombing runs, did you ever get shot down?
No, got shot at a lot, but not down.
Did any of your aircraft ever get seriously damaged while you were?
Yes.
How damaged? How?
Lose an engine, maybe lose both engines.
Did anybody in the planes ever die while you were in there?
Yes, paratroopers
How did they die?
got shot
Flak?
most of the time. See, Hitler had this, what the hell was it? There was always a secret weapon, you know. And we were involved in trying to destroy that secret weapon one time. And we did, actually. I can remember it being just a lane in a forest. How the hell we ever got in there with bombs, I don't know, but we got them. And then the colonel just picked that day to die.
What do you mean by that?
He died. He just died. Oh, I know how he died. He committed suicide, but that's how I got a lot of favorable attention. I buried it.
You did what?
I buried it.
What did you bury?
The gun.
And how did you come across the gun?
It was in his hand.
So you found,
Yes. Yes.
do you recall his name?
Hudgens.
And that was after you got back from a bombing run?
Yeah. Actually, it was probably after we got back from paratroop drop.
Why did you bury the gun?
I don't know. What I wanted them to do was not to know he committed suicide, so that's probably why I buried the gun. Colonel Hudgens.
Remember any preparation for D-Day?
Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
Well, first of all, the first thing that happened was all the entrances to the base were closed, and all the paratroopers started to arrive. They were basically from the 82nd and the 101st parachute regiments, which unfortunately they had a terrible. They had about a 80% casualty rate.
What were you guys doing with the paratroopers? Were you?
Well, the invasion began with the dropping of the paratroopers.
Okay.
That's how the invasion began.
And you were flying the C-47s?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were called different. They had a different DC-3s. They were then.
Oh, okay. And how many glider runs did you do? How many pulls?
I don't know, quite a few.
Yeah.
Quite a few, because you had a lot of people to transport. Average parachute regiment probably had about 10,000.
And so you flew paratroopers at the beginning of the invasion.
Oh, yeah.
Did you fly afterwards as well, or during?
Afterwards and during.
What did you do during?
It's always the same thing, dropping troopers.
Even afterwards as well?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You had this situation where Montgomery thought that he should be running it, and unfortunately Eisenhower was. So there was no love lost there. And then you had to throw in that other idiot, what the hell's his name? Who am I trying to think of? The other idiot.
Eisenhower, Montgomery, and
Patton.
Patton.
He was a supreme idiot.
Did you ever meet him?
Yes. Do I want to meet him again? No.
Under what circumstances did you meet him?
Crossing the Rhine.
Okay. And did you meet Montgomery as well?
Yes. He didn't want to meet me either.
Why do you say that?
Montgomery thought that he should be running the whole show, but Roosevelt insisted that Eisenhower run the show. That doesn't make for good friendships.
What did you do when you were on your R&R? Did you go with friends?
Oh, yeah. Actually, it was almost an order that you couldn't go alone. Sometimes I think they thought you might not come back.
Remember meeting the Pope?
Oh, yes, I remember that, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about meeting the Pope?
Well, in the Vatican, there's the Sistine Chapel. And the Sistine Chapel was being worked on. And so you couldn't really go in the Sistine Chapel. And then when he came out, he gave me something. What did he give me, a rosary?
The rosary.
Yeah, a rosary.
Did you say anything to him?
I don't remember. If I did, I wasn't into speaking to popes.
There were a whole bunch of favorite memories, but something you enjoyed while you were overseas?
No, but have you ever heard of Slapton Sands?
No.
Slapton Sands. Everybody who went to Slapton Sands died.
What was it?
It was, basically, you were walking between water and a levee,
Okay.
and most of those guys died.
Where was that at?
England, Slapton Sands. Yeah. They wrote a book about it. Somebody did, somewhere.
Were these people in your carrier group?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
What do you think the hardest decision you've ever had to make is?
I really can't tell you.
Yeah, you have to think about that one. That's kind of a...
It all goes back to Slapton Sands.
In what respect?
Everybody that went to Slapton Sands died.
But in terms of your decision, did you have to decide to either go or not go?
Oh, I didn't have any chance to decide. There was somebody called the colonel that told you what you had to do.
And did you go to Slapton Sand?
Yes.
For what reason?
Probably because we were ordered.
And you made it through?
Oh, yeah. Everybody that was in our unit made it through. It was a big scandal from the British point of view, because they lost so many men on, basically was a nothing deal.
Do you remember where you were when you were told that the war was over?
Well, only because we were then packaging all the gliders, putting them in boxes. I'm saying boxes, they were about as big as this room. And they were taking them to, where the hell did they take them? Anyway, they went home in some way. They went to the, what used to be called the ZI, the Zone of the Interior.
Were you in Ramsbury when you were told the war was over?
Yes.
Yeah. And how did you get home?
Did that flight to Africa, all the way.
And did you, where did you land? Were you in New York? Is that where they took you back to, or were you down in Florida?
Florida.
In Florida. And how did you get home to Chicago from Florida?
I don't remember.
You take the train?
I could have.
Were you happy when the war ended?
Oh, no. The thing that I thought was so crazy, there was a place on the Mediterranean where we were picking up people and flying them back to the United States, you know. I always thought, here we're landing to take these guys back and they're shooting at us. Whatever they had, they do. Oh, nice.
So after you came home, do you remember what, did you go back to school?
I had to. Went to law school.
Went to law school. And then after you went to law school, did you start working in the legal field, or did you do something else?
Worked in the legal field. I tell you, all my clients had last names that ended in vowels.
Did you did insurance for a while too, though, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. I worked for the Aetna.
And then you went into law, and then you went into the legal field.
Yes.
What type of cases did you work on?
Criminal.
Yeah. And did you meet any notorious criminals?
Albert Taco.
And who was he?
A notorious criminal, believe me.
And what did he do? For those of us that don't know.
Oh, yeah, he was part of the Taco gang from Detroit. Oh, I remember him.
Was that mafia, or was it a different kind
The
of?
mafia.
Yeah.
He was a very bad guy.
Yeah. How did you wind up with him as a client?
Maybe he wanted to go.
You were in Chicago Heights, right?
Yeah. Everybody in Chicago Heights was, shall we say, had a record.
So you just happened to be in the right place
Yeah.
at the right time.
Yep.
Do you remember any famous people that you've met over your life?
Who? She's nodding. Yeah, Percy, yeah.
I'm trying to remember, he met Percy, he was good friends with Percy, and
U.S. Senator,
Thompson, that was in office,
Governor Thompson, yeah.
and Jack Walker,
Oh, yeah.
and the Speaker of the House, I can't remember all these names, but
Any non-politicians that were famous?
I don't think so.
And what branch of the Illinois government did you work in?
Legislature. What are you saying?
judiciary.
Oh, legislature, judiciary.
Yeah. And you, did you enjoy being a politician?
I suppose I did.
Yeah. And why, do you remember, why did you become a politician? Say it louder.
Eagle.
Mom says it's because of your ego. You agree with that?
Yes.
Do you think politicians today are different than they were back then?
I doubt it.
My name is Shirley Thompson.
One more time with your middle name?
Why? I don't like my middle name, so I go Shirley E. Thompson. That's me.
That stands for Eileen.
Oh,
And then how did you eventually get into court reporting?
well, when I was in high school, my favorite subject was shorthand. I loved it. And of course, I liked typing. So Mrs. Wilhoit was my teacher, and she was very strict, very, very strict. But I didn't care, I really liked it. So I was in my senior year, and they had us take a test to work for the government. So I passed that test, and I went downtown, and I worked as a secretary to Rudy Struzek. All these years, and I can still remember his name. He was in the ammunition department. And so I worked there until I got pregnant with Kevin. So and right about then I quit and I stayed home, and then I had Kevin, and my sister Jean had Debbie, right, kind of not simultaneously but close. So we're uptown walking with the babies in the buggy, and I meet a lawyer that I happen to know, Leonard Career, and he said to me, Shirley, your shorthand is beautiful. I would suggest you go over to the courthouse and talk to Judge Schultz and see if you can fill in for this guy because he's going to retire. So I did. And Leonard told me it was going to be part-time, only Saturday mornings, just divorce cases. Everything would be great. So I did, and Judge Schultz said, all right, I'll put you on 3 months probation. After 3 months, if your shorthand is as good as the guy with the machine, whose name I don't recall, the job is yours. After 3 months, the job was mine, and I started from there, and I took all the divorce cases in the morning. Well, then the lawyer started calling me at home and saying, well, would you come and take a deposition this afternoon, blah, blah, blah. And it wound up, I finally hired somebody else to help me because I had so much I couldn't do it all. Then Allstate became one of my major clients, so then I hired somebody else.
Is this how you started your own company?
This is when I started my own company,
What's
yes.
the name of the company?
I didn't have a name. It was just Shirley Kreis Court Report. That was it. Judge Schultz offered me the job as an official reporter, and I said no, because that meant I gave up the business and I had to work 5 days a week, although he said, no, it's only going to be 4 because you have a day off to do your typing. And I said, no, I didn't want it. Well, he came over to the house. We lived on Longwood Drive. And he talked to Louis. And he convinced Louis that I should take that job. Yeah, you got it. Well, I said, all right, you're sure? I'm going to be gone, you know, I can't help it. I don't know what the hours are. The courts run, because at that time they had night court. And I had to go like to Thornton and South Holland. Those were night courts. They weren't day courts. So anyway, I did all that stuff. And then, of course, Louis couldn't stand it because I was making so darn much money, more than he was. And then there was other stuff that happened, and I said, that's it. I went back to Leonard, and I said I want a divorce, and I got one. That was it. Grandpa and I met in the courthouse. The first time I think we met was in Markham, and then lots of times in Chicago Heights, because he practiced in the Heights, and that was one of my courtrooms, Chicago Heights Court, Judge Carl McGeehee.
And what were your first impressions of each other?
I don't know. I wasn't really too thrilled.
Why?
I don't know. At that time, I still had a husband, and I wasn't really looking.
Where was your first date?
Mrs. Savan's. Our first date was to Mrs. Savan's. It's a French restaurant, and it's not there, I don't believe, anymore, but it was out on, oh gosh, it was out south and west
How long were you dating before you got married?
Oh, let me think. About 3 years, 4 years, maybe.
Can you describe the first time that Dad met your parents?
Oh, yeah. I remember that very well. My father was still alive, and he didn't like him.
Why?
He was a lawyer. My dad did not like lawyers. But, and they, at that time, my family knew nothing of the things that had gone on between Louis and I, so they thought Louis was still the greatest since sliced bread. But didn't matter, they didn't talk to me for a year after we got married.
Including your brothers and sisters?
No, some of them did, but some of them stayed with my parents, and they couldn't very well talk to me with my parents around. No, they were unhappy, my parents were.
And
of course, being Catholic.
right. Did you have a formal wedding, or?
Well, we got married in church,
Yeah.
yeah.
And was your whole family there and all that?
No,
Okay.
no, it was just he and I.
How did you wind up talking to your parents after a year?
Well, we moved in next door to him, didn't we?
That's one way.
We did. We moved into Jasers right next door to him.
So do you remember the first time that Dad met your brothers and sisters?
He was meeting them kind of gradually, but they had, let's see, we had Thanksgiving at our house, John and I, and we had them all. And that was a real house full, but it was wonderful. Everybody, we had them.
Tell you, her father never came to see anybody. One day I parked at the front door, and there he was.
Driving up the driveway. We lived on Pine Road. Every Sunday, my parents always had coffee cake and coffee and expected all of their married children to come home with their families. This one said, "Not me. I'm not doing it every week." So we hadn't gone for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks maybe. And one Sunday, John's right. He looks out the front window, and there's my mother and father driving up the driveway. They came to see us. So we wound up going back to see my mom and dad, but not every week. We just...
Do you remember meeting Dad's parents for the first time?
Oh, yeah. Sure I
How
do.
was that?
Oh, that was... His mother was cool, very cool. But his father was just sweetest thing you could ever meet. He told me I was his favorite daughter-in-law. Can you believe it? And he already had one. Not at that time, but he had one. But his mother over the years was, his mom was that type of person. She wasn't warm, but she was kind. I don't mean she wasn't kind, but she was not really a warm person.
Which kid do you think was the craziest? Not of your brothers and sisters.
Oh, not of my brothers and sisters? You.
He's so full of it.
No, it was Keith. He was always there every time it turned around. Keith was into something new. He really was. But so were you. You were not an angel.
He's talking about Kenny.
How are you? Poor Ken.
Who was the craziest?
None of them. Nah, they weren't crazy.
Who'd you get out of the most trouble?
I think the one we got out of most trouble was you. Yeah, I don't remember doing it for the other boys.
And who was the most angelic?
Oh, absolutely you.
Finally.
Finally.
How would you describe your parenting style?
I think my parenting style was right on course. I was strict, and yet I showed every one of them that I loved them, and I always listened. That's what I thought was important. And that's why some of my grandchildren today will come over here and pour their hearts out, and I don't tell a soul. And that's the way I treated my kids. I remember so many times taking one at a time in the car, driving around. This was when I was single now. And one of them, I'm thinking of which one, I'm not going to mention. But, oh Lord, so many problems. And I said, all right, let's go. We'll take a ride, you can talk. And boy, that seemed to help. So, no, that was my way.
What event or a couple of events do you think shaped your life the most?
Well, getting married to John was one, that definitely. And being a court reporter was the other one. That really shaped my life.
What is one piece of advice that you would give to your grandkids?
That's hard to say. If you marry and have children, make sure you let them know you love them, but don't be a wimp. That would be make sure it never kills them if you crack them on the butt. That's the way I look at it.
What do you think the scariest moment of your life was?
When I found out he was sick.
Do you remember going on the honor flight?
Yes.
What do you remember particularly about that?
Nothing.
Had you seen the War Memorial previously to that?
No. But the most impressive one was the Korean War.
Yeah.
That was by far the most impressive one. And there was an old guy there that kept chasing the kids out of the reflecting pond. I can remember him.
Do you remember Dad's honor flight?
Oh Lord, yes.
And what is probably the one standout memory that you have of the honor flight?
Oh my God, that was so impressive. When they landed back in Chicago at Midway Airport, the whole airport was loaded with people and flags, and they had the band playing, and just the Navy and the Army were there, and they had all these young people who had gone on the honor flight with them. They were pushing the wheelchairs, and it was just the most fascinating, wonderful thing I've ever seen. It was really heartbreaking. Well, because when you saw all these men getting off that airplane, and a lot of them were in wheelchairs, and you knew all that they had donated to their country, and this was nothing compared to what they had given us.